Hey, welcome to the Perma Talks. This is the second to last Perma Talks of the 2024 series. And today we have a very, very special guest. We have Brenna Quinlan, all the way from Australia. And we're going to be doing a little bit different today. It's going to be more like a podcast style interview kind of session where we learn about Brenna and the topic of permaculture art as activism. And yeah, I found you, Brenna, online several years ago. I don't remember exactly when and where, but I saw your illustrations and your art, and I was like, wow, this is cool. This is really, really cool. And since then, I've been fangirling your work online. And I also got all the way from Australia your these action cards that we use in our courses. It's amazing. And yeah, I'm so glad to finally kind of meet you and talk to you in person, even though there is the couple of thousand kilometers distance in between. But yeah, do you want to kind of introduce yourself first before to start the session?
Sure. Thanks, Lumia. Thanks for having me here. It's great what you guys are doing, so it feels really special to be a part of it. As Lumia said, my name's Brenna Quinlan, and my main gig is as an illustrator in the permaculture and climate action space. I also teach permaculture design courses, and in Australia, we have a very special course that teaches people how to teach permaculture design courses. So those things overlap in that they're communication about what we can do well in the world to make the world a better place. Communication is one of my real passions, and we'll be talking a bit today about my drawings. And outside of, I guess, the work and activism sphere, I also live in an intentional community. I practice permaculture in my daily life. I'm building a straw bale house. So all that sort of stuff keeps me very busy and also very happy, because living a permaculture life is one of the best decisions I ever made. Thanks, Livia.
Yes. How did you actually come into permaculture? Like what is your story, so to say?
Sure.
If we're thinking about like first you and permaculture.
Yeah, well, I was living in Australia, studying at university in my early 20s, and I was a practicing artist, organizing art exhibitions and exhibiting my works and those of other people. And I felt like something was just a little off. I'd studied journalism and art, and I couldn't find a job in journalism, and it just seemed like a bit of a dog eat dog world in that sphere. So I bought a one-way ticket overseas, and I wasn't sure how long I would be over there, but I knew that I would come home when I'd found what I was looking for. Now, I ended up overseas for 6 years, mostly in the Americas, and particularly mostly in South America. I rode a bicycle from Canada all the way down to the Panama Canal. That's 11,000 kilometers on bicycle. It took me about a year. And I started staying, I wasn't paying for accommodation then because I didn't have an income, and I was a long-term traveler. And I was staying camping, but also like talking to people. We, roll up to a town just before evening time and see who was out there. And sometimes they'd show me a place to camp, and sometimes they'd say, come stay with me. And through that, I ended up being introduced to this idea of volunteering or woofing. And I volunteered at a couple places on that cycle trip. And once I got to the end of Central America and skipped over into South America, I thought, this is what I really want to do. I want to volunteer for a good couple of years and see what this is all about. So I did, and the places that were the most vibrant, where the people were the most happy, where the community was really singing, where there was abundance on all the levels, were the places that practice this thing called permaculture. I got really interested in permaculture. I did my permaculture design course in Chile. To pay for that course, I exchanged that course for a month-long natural construction internship that a group of my South American friends and kept teaching permaculture after that, all through Uruguay, Brazil, Argentina, and Chile. So that was a couple years. I got back to Australia and then kept doing permaculture here as well. It was funny getting back to Australia because Australia is the home of the permaculture concept as a movement. And all the Australian permies were like superstars, like heroes in South America. And I'd never heard of any of them because I didn't do permaculture when I left Australia.
Yeah, no, that must have been an experience, kind of. How did then, like, how was it coming back to Australia and kind of, um, I don't know, how did it feel then different, coming back to the permaculture in Australia, which is probably a bit more, mm, had been there longer and was a bit more, I don't know, mature, or somehow, I think the circles might have been bigger, or were they bigger than in South America?
Yeah, and it's very interesting to deep dive into the manifestations of permaculture in different countries. So Australian permaculture very much overlaps with gardening. People think permaculture is gardening in Australia, and that's partly because Australia has a strong middle class, people who can afford to take 2-week-long permaculture design courses and take that time off work are often middle class people. And because one of the founders of permaculture, Bill Mollison, said, start at your backyard, start where you live, start at your back door and move out from there. So the garden is a beautiful place to start. Feeding yourself is an important thing. In my experience in South and Central America, where there is greater inequality between the very rich and the very poor. Middle class are less wealthy than the middle class in Australia. And also a recent history of living on the land is it's a more recent memory in the dominant culture. Australia, being a colonized nation. I mean, I get South American countries are colonized too, but there is more. A lot of people's grandparents are still living in earthen huts that they built themselves, whereas that in Australia is less common. So people tend to see permaculture as being about eco villages and intentional community and about natural construction. Because if you throw some seeds on the ground, they'll grow. That's the easy part. But we need spaces where we can shelter, where we feel stable, where we feel safe. And we also need community around us because the government and the powers that be, there's a lot of corruption, there's hyperinflation, there have been dictators in recent history. So people don't feel that they can rely on those institutions. So it was very interesting to come back to Australia having learned about permaculture in South America, and then I thought I knew what permaculture was, and I came here and I didn't know much about gardening. I mean, I'd grown food, but the focus hadn't been on the plants. So I had to get very good at that very quickly. And I guess the other thing I want to mention that particularly Argentinian and Chilean permaculture, which is what I have the most experience in overseas, their kind of brand of permaculture was very connected to land and place. And there were a lot of Indigenous traditions coming through in that. So one place where I stayed in Peru, we actually made offerings to the largest tree at the place where we stayed. And that was an Indigenous tradition that one of the owners of that place had learned from their Indigenous grandparents. And that to them was permaculture, packaging up some little bits and pieces, singing a song in a group of people near this tree. And it was a really beautiful experience. And they did that every year to nourish the tree and to thank the tree. And I thought, yeah, that is a really cool side of permaculture that I don't think is as strong in Australia. And, maybe we could introduce some of that stuff and do that a little better.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And I'm sure that must have also affected your art. No? So if we, like what I understood that, art, you had art before permaculture. And how did that then happen when that you kind of started combining permaculture and art and kind of this activism also?
Yeah, so when I was on that big trip overseas, I was still creating art for a time, and then on that year-long bicycle trip, I wasn't making much art, but I was learning Spanish and growing in other ways. And then I started learning about permaculture, and also my eyes were open to the big issues of our time, climate change and inequality and deforestation, all of these things. I thought, gosh, I can't just make pretty pictures anymore. It's just we don't have the luxury of that anymore. And to be honest, selling nice pictures to rich people never sat that well with me. So I know that art has meaning, and that a lot of art sold to rich people has a lot of meaning, but I struggled to connect that with any real world outcomes. So for a couple of years, I put art aside and focused on where my energy could be best spent. And after my permaculture design course, I actually asked my teacher, what is the most powerful way, in your opinion, that an individual can make change? And he said that for him, it was teaching, because he could have 30 students in a class have a transformative experience over those 2 weeks, and then go on to make ripples in each of their own ponds. And he had had thousands of people through his permaculture school over the 10 years it operated. And I thought, wow, that's a pretty convincing argument. I think I should do that as well. That sounds like a very powerful way for an individual to make change. So my path became education around the solutions. And that's what permaculture really offers, in my opinion, above other environmental movements, is it's a solutions-based philosophy. But I came back to Australia and I knocked on the door of David Holmgren, one of the permaculture co-originators, and I asked if I could live there, and I started interning there to further my permaculture experience in Australia. And 4 months into my internship was when, out of the blue, he asked me to illustrate his book Retro Suburbia. And it seems a bit silly now that I've been illustrating. That was in 2017. So I've been illustrating for a few years now as a career.
Sorry for
But I
interrupting. Sorry for interrupting. What was the name of the book you said?
Yeah, no worries, Doug. It's Retro Suburbia.
Retro Suburbia.
Yeah.
Because is it a permaculture book?
Yeah, it's about living a regenerative life, living a permaculture life when you live in the cities or the suburbs. And it does have an Australian focus, but a lot of people internationally, particularly in temperate climates, have found the book to be very useful. And if you go to the website, retrosuburbia.com, they've got a bunch of resources there. And I believe you can see a digital copy of part of the book on there. So that's worth checking out. They've got a Facebook group, and because a lot of people are living in the cities and suburbs, this idea of, creating the perfect piece of land that you live in out in the hills doesn't really exist for most people anymore. So I was thrilled to bits when he asked me to illustrate that book, and it just clicked for me that, oh my gosh, I can do art and permaculture. And I had not, it's silly, but I hadn't really thought that way before. So then I started releasing my art as activism on social media, and I've kept up illustrating books and lots of other things ever since. So that's how the two merged. It was just I was waiting for something to fall out of the sky into my lap after all this time volunteering and learning, and then that book just kind of fell down one day and surprised me that there was a really fun and meaningful career that merged both of my passions.
No, that's amazing. Yeah, we had David also at the Perma Talks a few years back. It was really amazing to have kind of hear some of the things from the horse's mouth, so to say. How was that time at Meliodora? kind of, I don't know, how was it? How did it impact you? And how was it working then also on the illustration?
Mm. Yeah, the place Meliodora, which is named after a eucalypt species that grows is endemic to central Victoria, where the farm is, where the property is. It's a very beautiful place to live. I ended up spending 4 years there before I left. There's 130 fruit and nut trees. They have chickens, they keep goats. There are geese in the orchard. There are 5 annual vegetable gardens. There's 3 houses, a big one where David and Sue live with any volunteers they have. And that's also the office for their publishing business. So their book Retro Suburbia and a whole bunch of other permaculture books have been published by them. And then the medium house is where Milkwood Permaculture used to live, if you've heard of those guys. And yeah, the tiny house is where I lived. So it's lovely that they can have a variety of ages and life experiences all there contributing to keeping the place going. I found it a very rich and interesting learning experience. It's where I learned everything I know about gardening because I was pretty fresh when I arrived. And I interned there for 4 months full time, living in David and Sue's house. And then when I started illustrating the book, I moved to the tiny house. They call it the tea house. And after illustrating the book, which also took 4 months, there's a lot going on in that book, 300 illustrations, and they're
Wow.
all hand drawn. I didn't know a thing about Photoshop when I started drawing that book. So every change had to be redrawn and redrawn. And I loved every second of it. I learned so much about illustration in that process. After the book finished, they said, I think it's working. You can stay here as a community member. So very generously, they let me pay my rent in a work exchange. So once a week on Farm Friday, me and the other residents, and also people from the general public, a few of my friends, would all get together. And with David, we'd walk around the whole place, see what needed to be done, make a list. And then for the rest of that Wednesday, we'd carry that out. And we netted fruit trees and weeded garden beds and planted all the seedlings to feed the 3 households and to cater for all the courses that they would run. We built a fire bath, so a bathtub outside that's heated by fire. There were dams there. You could go for a swim in the summer. There's this whole, they call it the gully, like a whole system along a creek line that goes for about 2 or 3 kilometers that over the last 37 years, David and Sue have transformed from a very eroded post-gold rush landscape with blackberry and rocks. And blackberries aren't native to Australia. They're a weed species that comes in when there's not much else growing there. And they transform that into this lush forest of a mix of endemic species, native species, a mix of naturalized species, so plums and hawthorn get deposited by birds and then grow very well in that climate in central Victoria in Australia. And then also planted species like oaks and willows that are a low fire hazard, because that part of the world is it's the most fire prone region in the entire world, central Victoria. Wow. It's had the most deaths from bushfire, and it partly being having had the gold rush go through, there's a lot of young trees very close together. So fire safety is important. So they've created almost a botanic garden that you can walk down, and we'd graze the goats there every day on the species we didn't want, like the blackberry, and then protect the species we did, like the oaks. And some of the trees there are over 30 years old now. So there's the 1 hectare, 2.2 acre property that is Meliodora, and then there was all the commons around Meliodora that had been improved, huge investments of time and love and energy over many, many years. And it's amazing what David and Sue could achieve. And you know, we all used to have commons. Everywhere was commons. Everywhere was shared property, caretaken by the people. And it's very rare nowadays, at least in the places that I've stayed, that people openly and generously and joyfully caretake land that isn't owned by them. So yeah, that was one of the really beautiful things. That also David and Sue are very active in the local community. You know, the ethics of permaculture, earth care, people care, and fair share. They really live those ethics. So always running events and doing things for free because they were good things to do. And I think I changed for the better as a person for being around that energy.
Oh, that sounds really amazing. And if I heard kind of like correctly, it was the illustration work, or that kind of that question, that thing that dropped into your lap now was kind of the kickstart where you got the idea that permaculture and art can actually work together and, you know, make an impact.
Yeah. I don't know why I was so late to the party, but I'm glad it found me eventually. After I had illustrated Retro Suburbia, I started working as an illustrator with, I guess, with the aim of making difficult or information or big issue concepts more accessible and digestible for people. Because there's only so many times that you want to hear statistics about how much of the ice sheet's being lost, and you know, there needs to be a middle person between the science and your average citizen, and the arts plays that role, the artist plays that role. So the novelists, the musicians, the visual artists, the poets, that's our job, that's our responsibility, to help people connect with issues and to feel empowered about those issues, and also to find the answers that people are looking for. So a lot of my art as activism work on Instagram, social media, is around motivating people to be their best selves, because everybody cares deeply about the world. Everybody is troubled by the big issues, and not everybody knows where to start, what to do, or that they're not the only one. So my images either, you know, depending on the image, they're either comforting for people or they're inspiring for people. They, you know, maybe they give new ideas that people haven't thought of before. Maybe they translate a statistic into something that's funny so people can see it in a new way and really remember why that's important. It's just furthering the conversation. And yeah, honestly, Retro Suburbia happened. I hadn't, I just hadn't imagined that that was a thing. And it's still quite rare. There are a few activist artists out there in a similar sense to what I am, sort of cartoonist illustrators, but not enough. So if you're out there thinking of it, please give it a shot. What have you got to lose?
Yeah, amazing. No, that's so true. Yeah, that's one of the issues that I've been also thinking about very for a long time. It's like this, people feel so disempowered today. No, they don't feel that they can make any change, or it's not worth it, or they don't know where to start. So it's very important to give people some inspiration and tools into the hand. But yeah, talking about inspiration, like, where do you then get your inspiration, or so to say, like the actual topics and the actual the nitty-gritty of what you then do? No, where does it come from?
Oh, so many places. I feel like I'm a sponge for inspiration, just wafting through the universe. Every time I hear a podcast or read a book or go to a talk or a workshop, every time I teach on a PDC and I'm sitting in on my co-teachers' classes, I'm writing, and I have these learning books. I've got so many of them now. They're all the same size, that they're unlined white paper, and I'll just fill pages and pages of notes, ideas, things that I say that I've outsourced my brain to these books, things that I really need to remember, but it doesn't always stick up here. And then I have one specifically for illustration ideas. and I might sketch a little thumbnail image in there or just take some dot points. And then when I'm in the zone, when I've got a half a Saturday or something to sit down and actually draw, that's when I dig into that treasure trove. And it's such a great feeling, you know, just going in and everything's a good idea, and that one's funny and that one's clever, and that one's a metaphor that I haven't quite figured out yet. Like, you know, like, how do you describe how we have to make money but we can't, but when we make money and have money, we end up creating more emissions? Or like, what metaphor can encapsulate that? You know, I'll just sit in that space and figure out the best way to show it. And then the drawing part is easy, and I'm pretty quick at it now. But I could sit, if I've got 5 hours to do 10 drawings, I'll sit for 4.5 thinking about one, and then maybe get 3 done right in the last few minutes. But yeah, I think if you orient your life a certain way, almost everything you're exposed to is inspiration. It's pretty exciting. And I get invited to teach workshops or to do talks at sustainability events and that kind of thing. So there's always other fun people doing their thing. I'm also just graduated to being a DJ in my partner's permaculture band. Formidable Vegetable is the band's name. It's quite an interesting name. And they're a big deal in Australia, and I rap on one song and I get to be on stage. And so that's meant we've done 130 gigs in the past 12 months. It's meant that I've got to go to all these different festivals and be exposed to all this other inspiration, you know, meeting all the other people doing the fun stuff. So inspiration is under every rock, I think. You've just got to write it in your special book.
Exactly, yeah, and remember and think about it a little bit and combine it, yeah. How would you say has your, you know, how to ask, like, how has this approach evolved over time, or did you have it like from straight on? And generally, like, how would you say that your how have things evolved since your time kind of started doing this?
With the illustration work?
Yeah, exactly. Kind of your artistic practice and yeah, even generally.
Yeah, it's interesting. I finally eked out some time to draw on the weekends, which was great. It's been a while because we're in the middle of, my partner and I are in the middle of building our home. You can't see all of the clay render, but it's here. I had to hose myself off before I came to this because I was so covered in clay. So I've been very, very busy. But I guess the urge to create, the urge to draw, it's almost an obsession. It never goes away. Even when I tried to suppress it when I was over in South America, it never quite went away. It kept kind of popping up. Oh, someone's got a birthday, I'll do them a drawing. Or, oh, I'm listening to this thing and it's really inspiring, I'll take visual notes. Or I'm in this garden, I'll just quickly sketch it so I remember it. It kept popping out in these little surprise ways. Now that I've channeled that into a career, I guess it's changed a lot. I mean, social media isn't perfect. It's very flawed in a lot of ways. Big multinational companies, and very divisive for people, the way that the algorithm is set up. But it's also been very positive for movements, for people to connect and feel supported and feel solidarity with each other. And as an artist, I found it useful to be able to publish my artworks online on socials and have that art reach the people that need it. So I'm putting things out there for free every day, and then they spread. And overnight, an artwork can be seen by millions of people, which to me doesn't speak to me being special or super clever. It's just that sort of message is really needed right now. So I found that very, very useful. It's meant that I've done hundreds of these artworks that I've posted online over the last few years, hundreds and hundreds. It kind of keeps me accountable. It keeps me current. I know what people are needing because I see their reactions. It's like a two-way conversation that has gone on for 5 or so years now. So that's been pretty exciting. Like the risk as a visual artist is that you spend a lot of time alone in your own head, in your room, with your pencil or your tablet or your computer or your paintbrush, just doing your thing. And then getting feedback, that's the tricky part of the situation. And it used to be, oh, you could have an exhibition. So once a year, maybe, if you were lucky, some people would see your work and you'd get to hear if it was good or not. But now socials has really opened that door that it can be a daily conversation. And I really appreciate that because it gets the message out there. And that's really my whole goal as an artist. The other thing I'm leaning more towards now is illustrating books. And I've illustrated quite a few for other people, which is a really fun collaboration. But choosing topics like permaculture that are really broad, there's a lot of information there, really meaty topics that could be beautifully illustrated and written about in a book. So I'm moving more towards that space. There are some publishing projects in the pipeline, which I'm pretty excited about. And I studied journalism way back. I've always enjoyed writing. So I think it's exciting to evolve to a point where I can merge my teaching skills, my communication skills, writing, and the illustration to help bring messages in new ways.
Yeah, so cool. Yeah, looking forward to that. Cool that you mentioned the feedback. That was also something I wanted to ask you about, like how or like I'd really like to just hear like what kind of feedback you get, and like do the stories that how your art has maybe impacted people's lives or their feelings or projects. Like, do you get some of that feedback back? Like, does it come to you or does it just stay somewhere in the distance? Do you have any experiences on how the art has actually impacted around the world?
Yeah, people are really generous with sharing what's worked for them. Like you sharing at the start of this that you've got my action cards there and that you've used them in teaching. I've had a lot of people send through photos of them in action using the action cards in a classroom with kids, with adults. So that's been really beautiful. Like dozens and dozens of people have sent through photos, because it can feel a bit like you're shouting into the void, especially with online culture. I know when I'm teaching a face-to-face course with people for 2 weeks, how that's landing, but other things that you're putting out there for free, you do need to hear every now and again how it works. So I know if a drawing is very popular online, that it's resonated with people. But I got sent a photo yesterday from somebody who I taught on a course, and she has my Permaculture Principles poster that my partner and I made with David Holmgren a few years ago to make his 12 Permaculture Principles a little more accessible. They've got slightly different wording that we found very useful when teaching children or teaching short courses. And they've got illustrations, they've got the original Permaculture Principle words as well. And it's this big poster, and the photo is of her 2-year-old with only a t-shirt on, looking at the poster intently, and she said he loves it and he goes up and talks about it all day, babbles like because he's only a baby. And I thought, oh, it's so beautiful, he's a gorgeous little kid with his little bottom pointing at the pictures on there. So that sort of thing happens quite a bit, and that's really nice. And because I teach people as well how to teach, sometimes I'll end up seeing someone I've taught running a workshop in permaculture because the permaculture course changed their life, and they started doing more of that, or they were inspired about education. And that's lovely too, to see that some of the ways I've taught something echo on in other people. And I've been inspired by those who taught me to teach things in a certain way, and then others might borrow from that way again. So watching how they change it and make it their own and keep it current and keep it useful, that's really lovely. But yeah, my drawings, my partner jokes that they have a life of their own. They just turn up everywhere. We'll go to a share house in Melbourne and use the toilet, and there's a drawing stuck on the back of the door.
Really?
Or we'll go to a friend's mum's house and there's one on the fridge. And we went to the gym last week and someone was wearing my t-shirt, and we're in this tiny town, and I didn't imagine anyone knew my art, but there's somebody who I'd never met before who does. And again, it's not because I'm special, it's because these messages are important for people. So it's lovely that you can make something at home that's a very quiet and personal process, and then offer it. It's an offering to the global conversation, and that it is useful for people. I feel really privileged that my career can be of use to others. Yeah.
Definitely. Doug, you have something to say, ask.
Yeah, I was just curious about the deck of cards. Both no, what's the who are using them? Is it for kids or adults or both? It looks great. And how I know there are several deck of cards around. I haven't looked at them or come around to buying them yet, but how I know Luby McNamara has another deck, for example. How do these compare, and would you be interested in translating them, or yeah, I have
Yeah, cool.
several questions, but yeah, just you can see what you do with this.
Yeah, so other decks of cards, Luby's recently released one, and I believe they've probably got different, the ways I've seen her use it on when she launched the cards was pick a card and contemplate it. So the impression I got was there for sort of personal process. And she might correct me on that. So definitely check them out. They're beautiful. Delvin Solkinson has a deck too that I've done some of the illustrations for, and they've collected all of the information from all the permaculture teachers Delvin could find and put them into this deck of cards.
Who was this other deck? Not Luby, but the other one you mentioned?
Delvin.
I think Nick will write the names into the chat.
Okay.
No?
In the chat. Yeah, I'm trying to.
Yeah,
there's
the
chat. Delvin Solkinson. And there's a couple others for teaching that are out there. Our one, Permaculture Action Cards, have David Holmgren's 12 permaculture principles in there with the normal versions of those principles and also the more user-friendly versions. I use the user-friendly ones for a short workshop. So say we're doing just a 1 hour thing at a festival or even a 1-day intro to permaculture, the shorter ones are just a little more user-friendly. And then I use the traditional 12 permaculture principle wordings in a permaculture design course or a teacher training. So we've got those cards, we've got the 3 ethics in there, and then there's about 60 cards that are drawings on one side of a permaculture action, and then a song lyric from Formidable Vegetable that relates to that drawing on the other side. So we've used them really successfully with adults in short workshops, in longer workshops, and in permaculture design courses, use them all the time. And with kids as well. The kids love them. There's one of like someone using a compost toilet, and that's like everybody's favorite. And one of the ways we've used them is put the 12 principles in a big circle on the floor and then hand out the cards so everyone gets 1, 2, or 3, depending on the group. And then invite everybody to stand up and with your picture word cards, have a look at the principles. That way everyone's looking, considering, reading them all. And then put yours down next to a principle that you feel relates. And there's no right or wrong answers. Any could go anywhere. And then we go and pick up a few. Hey, who had this card? What's going on? Oh, it's somebody sharing a basket of tomatoes with somebody else at a community garden? Why did you put it next to catch and store energy? And they'll say, oh, because vegetables catch and store the sun's energy. Great. What are some other ideas? You know, and you're just really bringing that conversation in. Yeah, it's about the principles, but it's also about the action. It's people start saying, I've been to a community garden, you know, and it was really great because we hung out with people who were much older than us, and we formed those relationships that we otherwise wouldn't have made, and they had a lot of wisdom to share. And all of a sudden you're bringing out of the group like this essence, this amazing lived experience of what we're teaching, but what we already know. So I found them to be an excellent tool. We just made them for us, and then people started asking for them, and we got sick of printing them. So we said, okay, we'll just print a lot and start selling them on the website. And it turned out to be, yeah, useful to other people too. It's like my art. It's just, oh, whoops, the thing that I thought was useful for me, it turns out that other people enjoy it as well.
Yeah, no, that seems to happen a lot. No, it's really true what you mentioned. It's like just people feeling seen and noticing that something that they think about, that someone else is also thinking about it, and then like most of the stuff that we think, oh, we're alone in this, it is really a shared experience. It's like in positive and the negative. And yeah, I've really enjoyed the cards once I saw them. Well, like I said, I've been fangirling your work for a good while, so I definitely wanted those, and also use them in the courses for just, for example, just ask people to, for their introduction to, I spread out all the image cards, and people just, yeah, grab one card to tell about, like help you tell about who you are, and grab one card to tell about like what brought you here. And just think of like, look at the images, and you don't need to look at the like if we're doing in Finnish language courses, they don't need to look at the wordings even, but they can. And that was just a really cool exercise. And then also just to demonstrate when we're talking about social permaculture, for example, again, I just put out all the cards and like, yeah, choose some that you think that might incorporate social permaculture in some way. It was also very effective. People had great ideas and pick the like you could basically pick all the cards, but it was so cool that people, what the ideas they came up with.
You're good. I'm going to steal those ideas. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. No, they were really really
great.
effective. Cool. Yeah, then maybe what I wanted to also ask you about is like, well, we all know the struggling poor artist trope, and you've mentioned money and also like exchanging economy a few times. So like how do you deal with all of that?
It's an interesting one, and my partner being a musician and an ethical musician at that, you know, a niche from a niche, it's something we're in constantly. I always run my decisions by the 3 ethics. And so, you know, on a career level, I get approached by like online, like, you know, businesses wanting me to promote junk and trying to tell me that my art's so good that I should draw something about their Italian watch company or whatever. And it's never tempted me. I'm not, if McDonald's came and said, you know, here's $500,000, do this thing, I'd say, go look somewhere else. My partner actually was approached by the largest supermarket chain in Australia to use one of his songs, because one of his permaculture songs accidentally has the same line in it as the line they use in their supermarket advertisements, down, down, down. He's talking about soil, but theirs is about crazy low prices. And he sent them a copy of Retro Suburbia and told them to read it and get back to him. And then we found out later, another musician we know, much more prominent musician, actually got his song used, and we found out how much they paid him. And I thought, well, maybe we should have taken the job. But it's, you know, you're always, I don't judge people for making those decisions, because rent is expensive, housing is expensive, food is expensive, everything's, I don't know what it's like over there, but everything's going up so much at the moment in where we live, and people are under huge stress just trying to pay for shelter and food. So a lot of people will take the deal with McDonald's or the large supermarket chain. But I'm really grateful that permaculture's given me such clarity on what I say yes to, what work I accept. And I think it's like my take on it overall, because I've met a lot of other illustrators that are struggling financially and struggling to find work. And I've never had that problem. I think the narrower your niche is, the easier it is for people to find you. They know when they need that one thing, when a local council or an NGO or a permaculture group or some sort of sustainability organization, when they need a drawing showing what they've done or a new campaign or communicating something important to them, they'll look for me or someone doing work like me. So that's been, I think it's really worked in my favor to say no to all of the other offers of not ethical work, and definitely makes me feel good. You know, you can all imagine that feeling of working on a job that just feels icky because they're not your people and they're just kind of using you to push their brand or something like that. I've never had to do that work. The people I collaborate with are just, they're often my heroes. They're just awesome people doing really good things in the world. So if you're out there like in your field wondering, should you say no to work that's not meeting your ethics, knowing that that's a financial sacrifice, I would say if you do have a safety net, I'd encourage you to try it, because it's actually worked really well for my partner and me. We've never been short of work. We can charge what's fair, and we're doing better than a lot of people who don't have the ethical niche, even though we're saying no to a lot of work. Very interesting how it evens out in the end.
Yeah, how amazing, huh?
Yeah.
Doug, you have.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, and I need to leave. But this is so interesting. So yeah, thank you very much. And
Thanks for
Brenna,
coming,
I would
Doug.
love it if I could send you an email later. I'm just starting. I'm in very early days of starting some kind of diploma process in permaculture, and I think I will do a lot of designs that has to do with art, urban life, and very related to what you're doing. So it would be really nice to, if I could.
Yeah, please reach out, and brennaquinlan.com, it's got my email there. There's a thing on the website to message me. I'd love to hear from you. That would be fantastic.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to looking at the recorded session later.
Yep. We'll put all Brenna's contact, your Patreon and website and Instagram and everything in there, so
Perfect.
you can find it there.
Thank you very much. Bye
Cool.
bye.
Thanks, Doug, for being here.
Bye.
Yeah, no, cool. Just coming back to the money and the way things goes. It's so interesting that you say that, because yeah, I think I've seen it too. Now, so this, if you really have some small thing that you do really well, people know how to ask you, nah? And it's quite interesting, actually.
It puts you apart from others too, like particularly in the music scene. There are a lot of very talented musicians. A lot of our friends are very talented musicians, and they all have other jobs as teachers or sound technicians or whatever, and their music becomes a part-time thing. But somehow through my partner having his art so narrow that they're a permaculture band, he's been able to live off only his music without having another job. So I can't explain it, but I think it's good. I think, and maybe it's because the niche is a sustainable one, a sustainability niche, and people are really needing more of that. It might just be the right time for narrowing down into something that really talks about ethics.
Yeah, definitely. And probably also like, well, hearing from you about the tiny house and stuff like that, it's not you are living a huge extravagant lifestyle. It's more like a limits of consumption and fair share, mindful lifestyle. No? So probably it goes hand in hand when you don't need like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars every month. No, it's maybe easier to get the money that you need actually for a good life.
It's very true. And I was able, the strawberry house we're building now, we're building with savings that I saved because I lived at Meliadora for 4 years and didn't pay rent. So it's very hard when you're paying rent to save up to own a place. But if you're lucky like me and can take that out of the equation and trade your help instead, that's a really great way on a very low income to be able to, you know, have those options. So yeah, my partner and I have never been high income. We're both low income and we live the richest life. Like when we go out for dinner, we're always disappointed because it's not as good as what we pick from the garden. It's that sort of thing. The free option just is often so much better, you know, or having friends around for a cup of tea instead of going out and spending money on something. It's easier because we live in a small town. Nothing's open after 3 p.m. anyway. Yeah. So you're not tempted by the nightlife of the big city. And we get paid to travel. When I teach permaculture courses or when we have gigs, we'll go to the other side of the country. We live in the bottom southwest corner and everything else happens. Sydney and Melbourne are on the other side, out east. We'll go there for maybe 4 months and really do the slow travel thing, do as many shows as we can. That's kind of our season for that sort of work, teaching and all that stuff. Make the most of the trip, drive all the way back. But it means we're not paying for a trip out east, where we're being paid for it. So there's lots of efficiencies to be gained in life if you can break out of the norm. I think get creative with how you see things. You can live such a rich, abundant life without having a high income. And yeah, I just keep proving that in different ways and surprising myself at how exciting that life choice is.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. That's also a topic that I've been thinking about and living also like many years. It's and it's really one of the it's also at the core of permaculture. I think it's this creativity now that you can really have creative solutions to different kinds of things, which I think your whole path is like a testament to, and not just solve all the problems with money that seems to be the way of the world now. Yeah,
it's you said something before that really I thought was really profound. It's kind of when we're giving messages through teaching permaculture or talking about it or living it or drawing about it, we are strengthening messages. Oh, it was when you said like it's important for people to feel like they're not the only one doing this. That everything we get from out there is you should be famous and you should be this thin and you should look this way and have all the makeup and the false nails and the shiny clothes and the private jet and whatever.
yeah.
It's all like external validation, and we hardly ever are encouraged to really work on what is kind of pure and good, and things that are internal validation, like being kind to each other and investing in community and growing plants, not because we'll benefit from them, but because it's a good thing to do, and caring for the other creatures that inhabit our space that aren't human. So these sorts of things are very rarely encouraged. And by modeling those things yourself, I live the way I do because I saw someone else living a really out of the box creative way and having a great time. And when we have people come and see us and say, wow, you can build your house out of straw and clay, like you can grow food in the garden, it just blows people's minds. And I think that's fun. I'd live this way anyway, but the added bonus is that, like somebody inspired me, I can maybe normalize the abnormal.
Yep.
Pass that on to others.
No, that's so true. Just thinking about looking at the time, and at least I have a few more questions at least. No, so if you still have time.
Yeah, go for it. I'm in no rush.
Yeah, amazing. No, I was like I've been loving the positive energy in this talk and in your story. But what would you say that it has been like? What are the challenges that you've met on your journey as an artist slash activist?
It's a good one. I think like before I started on the book Retro Suburbia, I had been, traveling and then volunteering for a few years at that stage. And I do remember being at that point feeling impatient. Like when's it all going to come together? Because I didn't want to waste time, but it felt like I was working towards something profound, by being part of this global activist movement that is permaculture. It felt like it was an important work. But because, you can spend 5 or so years at university and you don't have to question whether that's valuable or not, because society says that's valuable and it's valid, so you're doing the right thing. Whereas spend 5 years as a volunteer in different permaculture communities and no one really understands what's going on. But you feel in yourself that maybe it's moving towards something useful. So I can see now with hindsight, it was very useful. I know how to build my own house. That was interesting. I couldn't even use a hammer or a screwdriver when I started volunteering. I know how to feed not just myself, but my community. We live in an intentional community here. I know how to facilitate. I have facilitation skills now, and I'm the chair of our strata at our community, and we're putting all these things in place to really help our community to flourish. These are all things I learned in this free university of volunteering. But at the time I thought, gosh, when's it going to translate into a job? And our identities are so tied up with what we do for money. And what we do for money isn't always how we make meaning in the world. But I'm very fortunate that it's both. It's how I make meaning, it's what I do for money, and it's my lifelong passion and obsession. So it's nice that I could roll them all into one. Other challenges is currently the freshest one is building a house is really hard and takes a long time. And I really just want to draw. I'm tired of it now. Think, gosh, why? There's so many coats of earth that need to go on this render. But that's a short-term problem that I will definitely pay off. So if I had $1 gazillion, I'd just pay somebody to build a beautiful house and not think about it, and it would have happened a little quicker. But there's also richness in getting stuck in yourself, and we've had so many people from our community, including all of the kids, including some teenagers, who would have thought, I mean, when the 2-year-olds come along to put mud on the wall, you think, okay, that's pretty normal and gorgeous, but not that surprising. But when the 14-year-olds come down and have the best time, and they're talking with our queer neighbor, and then they're talking with, the 80-year-old activist from down the road that just came up to have a look and started putting mud on the wall, and then our town planner and the other people from local council came down to have a go at the busy bee. It's just been it's been really special. So it's been a challenge, but there's obviously been some beautiful sides of that, and it's lovely to be creating a home on a low income. I never thought I'd be a homeowner, so that's still surprising to me. I still don't know if it'll happen, It seems like it's a moving target, right? If you're building a house, it's just like but we must be getting closer, surely.
Yes, no, definitely. I'm sure it will be fine, and I understand it's like it's kind of a balance. No? So sometimes you have more intense area or like times in your life where you're doing something that it's just like it seems like it's never going to end, and then
Yeah,
but it will, I'm sure.
it will. Yeah.
Oh, that's true. And then which one should I ask first? Maybe if I like at this point, if you would give some advice to, well, you gave already some advice to aspiring artists that would want to try it out, and that they should, but do you have, what else from your experience could you give as an advice to aspiring artists or artists, even established one, who are maybe thinking about using their art to create some change?
Mm. Yeah, it's something I'm really passionate about because, like with other aspects of permaculture, people don't always know that it's possible to put their art, their career, their passion, it might just be their hobby, towards making the world a better place. It is possible. It's very doable. It's very exciting. And it's a soothing balm for the soul, in that when we aren't active on the big issues, when we haven't found what our purpose is, what our meaning is in life, we run the risk of feeling either apathetic, like I don't care about the suffering in the world, which is very normal, a very natural reaction, or feeling totally overwhelmed and anxious and sad because it is so present and it's so important and we can't do anything about it. So by using your creativity, your skill, your passion, whatever that might be, you might be a teacher, you might be a parent, whatever your thing is, you might sew clothes, you whatever it is. I've got a friend who works in a like investment banking firm, and she likes it and she knows it's a world. And she puts up my pictures like in the tea room, and she's got the compost system happening and the low waste, and there's a compost toilet, and she's just like runs events where people go out and plant trees. She's making change in her world. So whatever your passion is, whatever your world is, you can do your thing there. So if you're an artist, just start trying, like think of what sparks in you, what inspires you. If you watch a film about, someone who's gone from the city and started farming, or whatever it is, or someone who's helping the Great Barrier Reef regenerate, or helping the whales, whatever you've seen, or Indigenous rights, and you think, yes, they're doing it, whatever sparks that flame in you, that's your first issue, and create some art around that, and just maybe create 5 pieces around that, 10 poems, 4 songs, try it out in different ways. And then the next step, which is the hardest for a lot of people, is sharing it somehow. And it might be showing your family or your partner or your friends. It might be putting it online. It might be offering it to your community garden group or the volunteer program at the aged care home, or something where they need a poster of community getting it together, where they need your skills, where they need someone to read them poetry. So just thinking, what's the issue that makes me come alive? How can I transfer that creatively through my skills in a way that other people might like? And then what are the other people who I can share this with? Start small and work your way up. I was terrified the first time I put a drawing on Instagram. My heart was racing and I was shaking, and I hit quick and nothing happened, and I had to go to bed, and all night I was thinking, oh, people judging me, what's going to happen? But it kind of naturalizes after a while.
Yeah, it's always the first ones. No, that's really great advice. And what I really like about that also, it's definitely yeah, not just for the artists, but you know, for everyone. It's really, I love that example with the investment banker friend. So it's really true. Wherever we are, we can take some creative action. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, because we need investment bankers to be thinking about things, you know, wherever you are, just shake the ground a little bit. Yeah. Like just shake them up. Just show them something they haven't heard of before. And people love that sort of stuff. They just maybe haven't been exposed to it before. So try things. Your life can be your artwork.
Yeah, and that's also so true. Like we tend to, like, at least me, I tend to somehow think about, like, my bubble gets so small, and then I think some thought, and then it's like, oh, but this is not worth sharing. Everyone thinks like that, but then you share it to someone, it's be like, wow, I've never thought of it
Yeah.
like that. That happens so often.
Yeah.
It's
It's why
amazing.
education and facilitation are an interesting space, as I'm sure you'd agree, because you stay connected to what it's like for people who are taking their first step, and also people who are way along, who've been doing this for years, and you can see where you fit in between them, and it keeps you kind of connected to people starting out on their journey and people who are really advanced in their journey. It's cool to be able to see both quite regularly.
Yeah, no, that's true. But yeah, maybe kind of coming to a slow end. I know you had some images, then also we can check those out soon. But what are your next plans? You mentioned something about some projects.
Yeah, what have I got coming up? Australia's biggest celebrity is a Greek man in his late 50s with a huge beard called Costa, who is a gardener on TV. Yes. And he goes to the op shop, the thrift shop, to buy his clothes whenever he's at a fancy red carpet screen sort of gathering. He's well known, not good.
Okay.
So I work with Costa. I illustrated his book, and we're putting together a series of children's books to deep dive into different elements of permaculture. And that's what I'm currently working on. I'm super excited about it. And then trying to get my own book off the ground. So that would be authored and illustrated by me. That would be on gardening science, the first one. And also I've been really excited about making more permaculture content for screen. So TV, documentary. Was chatting to somebody from Screen Australia today about some permaculture kids show ideas we've got. So those sorts of screen projects are like funding cycles, and they take a while, but we're in it. I'm a year in at this stage, and it's an exciting space. And I think there's so many mindless shows out there. Well, you know, there's got to be more space for stuff with a bit of heart. So yeah, that's what I'm passionate about. And once my home is built, I will
Mhm.
be drawing more than ever, which is a very exciting prospect. And we should be moved in by Australian winter, so July, August.
Oh, that sounds really cool. Lots of going on.
Mm.
If you were to think about in general, like, do you have, like, thinking back from where you started and where you are now and how the world has changed, where do you see art as activism going?
Mm. Like the areas of that I want to explore are always shifting. And I think I'm really excited about the use of humor to help people connect with issues. I'd like to continue that theme. And I'm also leaning into, I guess, finding the solutions to some of the weaknesses that permaculture has, you know, acknowledging traditional knowledges, also calling in other people that don't meet, that aren't part of the greater demographic of permaculturists. So people of different ages, different cultures, different languages, different abilities. I think somehow using my art to make permaculture more accessible to different demographics would be exciting. And you know, Dan Palmer, his work was about making permaculture stronger. So not criticizing our global movement, but saying, okay, where is it lacking and how can we use that as good permies? How can we design that as an opportunity to make it better? Yeah, I'd love to use my art for that. Whether I'll get there or not, it's a pretty lofty aspiration, so you can hold me accountable.
Yeah, well, we'll ask you again in 2 years to come and talk about your current projects. Yeah, we can see what's been happening. Something. Yeah, cool, amazing. So maybe like just my last question that I had prepared. We can of course chat more. Just like Doug was also asking, like how can people engage with you and your work, and how can they find you? We'll put the links into like at the YouTube recording here, but maybe you can just mention them also.
Yeah, great. So my website, brennaquinlan.com, has everything there. People support me through Patreon, and if you're a Patreon supporter, you get a bunch of video content I've made, and you also get access to all of my drawings in high resolution. So you can print them, you can make them into stickers, you can make them into posters, you can post them on your socials, you can send them to your friends, make cards, whatever you like. And if you're a higher tier, once a year I actually draw a handmade illustration of you as a permaculture cartoon character. So if you'd like to know, I've got one of my partner actually. This was his birthday card, but it'll look something like this. If you'd like to know what you look like as your own permaculture character, that's Patreon, and it just gives me a stable income so I can keep drawing ethically and say no to the McDonald's of the world. Also, Instagram's my main platform. I'm on TikTok, but I'm 37 years old, so I'm too old to do it well. So I'll never be popular on there. And Grow Do It is the name of the collaboration between my partner and me. So we have an Instagram account called Grow Do It Too, where if you're interested in seeing all the mishaps that have happened in our straw bale house build, go check out Grow Do It. But my art's on Brenna Quinlan at Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, all of too many places.
Yep. So you are around.
Around, yeah. Just look at other people's like Instagrams and you'll probably see drawings there too.
Yes, we do. Cool.
I got a question. Probably an example. So I'm running the European Permaculture Network. We have around 100 members from around Europe, and it's a website mainly at the moment. So let's say I need a new illustration for the front page. How does that work? Do I go to your Patreon or do I contact you? What would be the right way?
Yeah, thanks, Dom. You'd send me an email and then we'll talk.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I got that. Thank you.
Amazing.
And if you like, I've got t-shirts as well up on my website, which it's on the list to actually tell people about them, but they are there. They're a big secret, but they're there. And I'll be telling people about them someday when I'm not rendering every day.
Yep. Cool. Okay, well, those were most like my questions. What about you? Do you want to share the images or do you want to say something else?
I think what we can do, if you can link to my Instagram in the YouTube, people can go and look at some of my art there. That's probably the easiest. Scroll through. And yeah, I guess thanks so much for having me on. It's been really lovely to talk to you. It's it's 6 o'clock in the evening in Australia. There you go. You can tell the light's going down. This is my tiny house, by the way. That's there behind.
Yay, nice.
It's pretty gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
In somewhat disarray because of the rampant building that's been happening.
Amazing.
Yeah, I just thanks so much for having me on. I think your questions were really thoughtful, Lumia. You did an excellent job, and it's lovely to meet you three online. And then anyone out there listening to this recording, very welcome to get in touch. I'd love to hear from you, especially if you're an artist, especially if you're a young artist thinking of furthering that. So if anyone listening has any young artists in your life, tell them they can always send me an email. And thanks for all of the great work you do. It's really exciting to know that there are fellow Permies out there in Europe and keeping this stuff going all over the world. So yeah, it's been fun.
Yes, thank you so much. And I think we can stop the recording. Thank you everyone for watching this film, and yeah, see you the next week. We have one more Perma Talks. We have the Finnish Luontoliitto, the Nature Conservation Society for kids, presenting their work. So listen to that.